Well, March is here, and the madness is already beginning. There are a clear top four in the ACC standings, but they could all switch positions before the ACC tournament starts on Tuesday. And everyone else is just working to improve their seeds in Greensboro to make that one final push to hear their name on Selection Sunday. We have a ton of action to cover. Let's get right to it, shall we? Yeah, hottest team in the ACC right now. Got to be the Virginia Cavaliers. The defending national champs have now won 7 in a row, 10 of their last 11. Joining us now live to take a closer look at the Cavs is WRIC's Natalie Calabat. Natalie, this latest team to fall to Tony Bennett's team was Miami last night. Neither team scored 50 points. What was the key in this one?
Chris, great to see you. And man, Virginia knows how to raise our blood pressure. Enough of these nail-biter games. But that pack line defense that Virginia has, you got to love it. The team was just not sharp on offense, and it's still near the bottom of the nation in points per game. And hey, Chris, Tony Bennett definitely knows he needs more production in the final weeks of the season.
We weren't as sharp as we needed to be, and that was discouraging from that standpoint. You know, Kihei, who has been so good for us, just had a tough matchup with Likes, and you know, he made some big plays, made the free throws and made the shot, but he wasn't his normal self. We weren't hitting outside shots, not that we've hit them that well all year, but we had to kind of say, all right, Mom, in the second half, you got to score. We got to get enough stops.
Now, Jay Huff scored 17 points in the first half alone for UVA last night. He's also played some monster defense. Maybe later we'll talk about that. But how important has that big guy been on this hot streak?
Chris, he's been super important coming off a career performance, obviously, against Duke. He had 15 points. But, Chris, last night, it's crazy. He didn't score a single basket in the second half against Miami. Virginia's offense was just not as sharp as they needed to be. But Huff's versatility really helps out the Hoos in a game like last night is such a close one.
He kept us in there with his offense, and again, you know, he had 3 blocks and some rebounds. So when we're struggling to score, you know, we'll take it any way we can, and if we need it from the three-point line, from our 7-footer or inside, it gave us a lift because our three-point shooting, Nor's was theirs real good, and thought he looked, you know, terrific with some versatility again, inside-outside play.
Now, that game against the Hurricanes was Virginia's second 2-point win in the last week, but their other opponent was a little more impressive. The Cavs took down Duke on Saturday. What does that win do for the NCAA tournament seeding there, Natalie?
Oh, Chris, it's huge. It's big. Virginia has gone from being just a bubble team just a few weeks ago, and now they're fighting for, what, an 8 or 9 seed right now. So the Cavaliers are locked into one of those top 4 spots in the league now and can finish as high as second. So definitely that win over Duke boosted the resume for sure.
And, of course, we're talking about they still got one more game left. I mean, they still got more basketball to play here. And, of course, we're talking about another huge statement win before heading to Greensboro if they could pull it off for the ACC tournament. What are the Cavs' chances against Louisville? Because we're talking about some monsters here when that team is on.
That's right, Chris. And, you know, the last loss that Virginia suffered before winning 7 straight was actually Louisville. And it was an 80-73 final just about a month ago back on February 8th. Now, Saturday will be Senior Day, recognizing Mamadi Diakite and Braxton Key. So Senior Day will put forth some energy, some excitement. Obviously, there will be a big crowd. It'll be a huge game for UVA. They must win to share the regular season title. But, Chris, the hope is still alive, so that's huge for UVA.
Well, for simply being able to pronounce Diakite's name every single time without fail, I give you the giant thumbs up. Thank you, Natalie. Enjoy Saturday's game. We're definitely going to be watching closely.
Chris. Thank you for having me, Chris. All right.
All right, Duke's loss in Virginia was their second in a row, third straight on the road, but they did return to the friendly confines of Cameron Indoor Stadium, pick up a huge win over NC State. The Wolfpack beat Duke by 22 when the two teams met in February, but it was a completely different story this week in Durham. NC State led for much of the first half, but Duke dominated after the break, steadily pulling away from the Wolfpack to win 88-69. Cassius Stanley led the Blue Devils in scoring and style points with 18, but it was the contributions from the bench that caught Coach K's attention. Wendell Moore Jr., Justin Robinson, and Jordan Goldwire all scored in double figures after starting the game on the sidelines, and each added 6 rebounds too. Coach K says, man, this was a good one after the team's recent struggles.
Yeah, it was a big win for us, obviously, after losing 2 one-possession games. You I was telling Jay Billis today that, our league has been so many one-possession wins and losses, and that you can't overreact either way. I mean, a couple weekends ago, we won a game that Carolina played better than us in, and we won by one possession. Then we won by one possession against Florida State. It could easily be 2 losses, just like the last 2 games we've played could easily be 2 wins. And so what happens at times, people overreact. They overreact, and now everything is wrong, whereas when you just won by one possession, everything was right. And it's neither one. And people say, I'm telling you that we're developing. We are developing. And by the way, if you don't continue to develop throughout the year, then it's gonna be sad for you.
Note for everybody watching, if you're Coach K, you can name drop. Go ahead, Coach. Go ahead now. And it's a familiar end of the regular season coming up for the Blue Devils. They'll stay at home to host their arch rivals, the UNC Tar Heels. That one tips off at 6 on Saturday evening. I'll be there for that. Cannot wait. Meanwhile, NC State heads back to Raleigh for their final game of the season. The Wolfpack host Wake Forest in a rare Friday night game. That one's tomorrow at 7. WNCN's Todd Gibson is talking to the Wolfpack about their NCAA tournament chances.
Well, it certainly didn't feel like a 19-point game. For 25 minutes, NC State went toe-to-toe with number 12 Duke before the Blue Devils pulled away late. And while the loss certainly will not help NC State's postseason chances, the Wolfpack says there's still a chance they can make the tournament.
I do believe it can still happen as long as we as a team believe in it, as a coaching staff, and just stay positive and work on the things that we need to work on. It got away a little bit later, but I think once again we're a great team, and I know that we can play with the best of them.
Game of runs, man. When they made the run, we didn't hit back hard enough. We got to do a better job. When a team gets a run in a home crowd like this, we got to stay poised, got to stay confident, and we can't get stagnant during the zone. So,
look, it's the end of the year. We played, I think, 29, 30 games so far. I told our guys everybody's banged up at this time of year. The teams that can figure out how to get a little rest and guys figure out how to get better and play through some fatigue and being a little banged up is fine. I think we got 8 guys that's ready. Hopefully we can take this week to be a little bit more ready to play.
The Pack has one more regular season game Friday night hosting Wake Forest, and then it's off to the ACC tournament where it will behoove NC State to win a couple of games to help their postseason chances. At the Cameron Indoor Stadium following the Wolfpack, I'm Todd Gibson.
Thanks a lot there, Todd. Florida State was just the latest victim to fall to Clemson on the Tigers' home floor. The Seminoles bounced back to beat Notre Dame, though, but as WMBB's Courtney Mims reports, it was anything but easy. Courtney?
After falling to Clemson by just 1 point on Saturday, the Seminoles managed to turn their luck around last night. Number 7 Florida State stormed back to beat Notre Dame 73-71. It was senior Trent Forrest who saved the day for the Noles. With the game tied, he drove it down the lane, missed a shot, but grabbed his own rebound and put it back to give Florida State the victory and the first ever win for the Seminoles at Notre Dame. But MJ Walker was the star of the matchup, doing what the Noles needed when they needed it most, scoring 16 points in the final 10 minutes to erase the Noles' deficit and put them back in the fight with the Fighting Irish. Walker finished with a game-high 21 points. And with the win, the Noles keep their control of the ACC. They play for a regular season conference title, the first in program history, against Boston College at home on Saturday. Reporting on Florida State, I'm Courtney Mims.
Well, after 2 straight on the road, Florida State be back in Tallahassee to close out the regular season. That game against Boston College starts on Saturday afternoon at 4:30, by the way. And after that tough loss, Notre Dame's going to try to get some mo back before the ACC tournament when they host Georgia Tech on Saturday. That one gets started at 2. WTTV's Dave Griffiths has the Irish perspective on the matchup with Florida State. Dave?
Many years, 18 wins and a near 500 conference record in the ACC will get you into the NCAA tournament comfortably. This doesn't appear to be one of those years, which is less than ideal for Notre Dame basketball. And that's where the Irish find themselves with 1 game left in the regular season. Over the past week, Notre Dame played 2, starting with a rather disappointing loss on the road to last in the league Wake Forest. But Game 2 brought the opportunity for redemption, hosting top 10 Florida State and South Bend. Second meeting of the year between the two teams. Game 1 went to the buzzer with Mike Brey crying out postgame after a loss. We're in the league too. Remember that? Well, yet again, the Noles and Irish played to the final whistle, and yet again, it was Florida State escaping with a win. 73-71 the final in South Bend. The pain of this loss, palpable, as FSU led for a grand total of 19 seconds. Notre Dame controlled things for much of the night, but not when it mattered, when the final buzzer sounded. And the Irish once again go home losers to a top 25 team, making it 21 straight losses for Mike Brey's Notre Dame against a ranked opponent.
I thought we were on our way, but they're just hard to deal with. They got so many guys that can just physically get into your paint. And our position defense, for the most part, was pretty darn good until the end of the game.
They closed out the regular season Saturday afternoon at 2, hosting Virginia Tech for Senior Day. Covering Notre Dame, I'm Dave Griffiths.
Good stuff there, Dave. Thank you. And Clemson has some huge wins this season, but losses to teams like Virginia Tech have them facing an uphill battle to hear their name on Selection Sunday. WSPA's Pete Yannity takes a little closer look at the Tigers' loss to the Hokies. Pete?
Well, the up and down season for the 2019 and 20 Clemson Tigers hitting another downturn on Wednesday night. After they'd knocked off number 6 Florida State last Saturday, their third top 10 win this year. The Tigers dropping a 70-58 ball game at Virginia Tech, a team that entered the contest having lost 9 of its past 10 ball games. Tigers simply couldn't find the right flow offensively when they needed it most. After they jumped out to a 9-2 lead, they trailed by 5 at the break. In the second half, the teams alternated 1-point leads back and forth before Tech pulled away. They shot nearly 55% from the field at the Hokies, the Tigers managing in the mid-30s from the field, and were at 25% beyond the arc. So they fall to 15-14 and 9-10 in the ACC, their record as they went into Friday night's final game of the regular season at home against Georgia Tech. But despite all the good resume wins they have this year, their overall mark will probably not be enough come Selection Sunday, even if they were to make a deep ACC tourney run. Covering the Clemson Tigers, I'm Pete Yannity.
Quality stuff, Pete. Appreciate it. Clemson's going to look to continue their home success as they wrap up the regular season. Like you said, Tigers hosting Tech on Friday night. That one tips at 7 for all those wondering. And that win over Clemson was Virginia Tech's last home contest of the year. The Hokies wrap up their season on the road at Notre Dame on Saturday at 2. WFXR's Jermaine Ferrell is covering that Clemson win from the Hokies' perspective, but first takes a look back at their attempt to take down Louisville. Jermaine?
Seeking its second top 25 win of the year, the Virginia Tech men's basketball team could not get it done at number 11 Louisville, falling 68-52 inside the KFC Yum Center Sunday evening. Of course, when you say the KFC Yum Center, you know Chris Clark, he loves the name of that facility. Now the Hokies were looking for their first win over the Cardinals since 1991 when both teams were in the old Metro Conference. Freshman Jalen Cone was a bright spot offensively for the Hokies as he led Tech in scoring for just a second time this season with 15 points off of 5 3-pointers. Guard Naheem Aline added 12 points. A redshirt freshman Tyrese Radford grabbed 9 boards for the Hokies. Meanwhile, the Virginia Tech Hokies, they opened up the season and the Mike Young era way back last November at the Clemson Tigers. And Tech got the win behind a monster game by redshirt freshman Landers Nolley II. Well, last night we have come full circle as Tech wrapping up the home part of their schedule at the crib against the Tigers. And the Hokies would get the season sweep. They beat the Tigers 70-58 at Castle Coliseum. P.J. Horn leading the way with 17 points and with 4 triples. And Tyrese Radford got 16 points.
It feels great. You know, the guys in the locker room, we talk about it every day. Like, we're tired of losing, and we're fighting. You know, it hasn't been easy. You know, we had some tough ones that we lost that we should have won, but it feels good to win.
We had to give our fans. They appreciate us. Wins, losses, they always telling us we're going to get the next one. They always had high hopes in us. Our focus on this game was big, and we just came to play, and we put it off.
Taking her, I believe we were under more control. We had more control of the ball. We made sure we were making 100% passes instead of 60% passes. Because you never know which way it's going to go if it's not 100%. It feels really good. I feel like we can carry this momentum on to the next game and try our best there to get a win.
Now the Hokies, they improved to 16-14 overall, 7-12 in the ACC. They are still in play to avoid playing in the opening day of the ACC tournament. Now Saturday at 2, Tech wrapping up the regular season as they play at Notre Dame. Covering the Virginia Tech Hokies, I'm Jermaine Ferrell.
Thank you, Jermaine. The only thing better than a 2-piece KFC and a biscuit, 3-piece KFC and a biscuit. Yeah, I'll stand by that, assuming. Louisville's got a chance to make a big statement in the NCAA selection committee this weekend, by the way. They travel to Charlottesville to take on the red-hot Virginia Cavaliers. That one tips off on Saturday at 4. The Cardinals have had plenty of time to prepare. WEHT's Randall Parmley taking a look at Louisville's last win last weekend.
Well, the Louisville Cardinals have put themselves in position to win at least a share of the ACC championship, and they did so by closing out the home season with a nice win against Virginia Tech. Now, the Cards rolled past the Hokies last Sunday, winning 68-52. Louisville broke it open with a 15-2 run in the second half, and their star, Jordan Nwora, was back to his old self. He scored 20 and brought down 12 rebounds. So now Louisville is 15-4 in conference, and they can claim, like I said, at least a share of the championship when they travel to Virginia on Saturday. Keep in mind, though, the road hasn't been kind to Louisville. Chris Mack's team has lost 3 in a row away from Yum Center, and you know this one could possibly be the toughest road game that they have played so far this season, with chance at a championship on the line. Covering the Louisville Cardinals, I'm Randall Parmley.
Thank you, Randall. I say play all the games at the Yum Center, but that's just me. Moving on, UNC just won their 3rd straight game. It's the first time they've won more than 2 in a row since November. Is that true? Wow, man. WNCN's Alyssa Ray reports the Tar Heels getting hot at just the right time.
In North Carolina's 93-83 win over Wake Forest, the Tar Heels shot 58.8% from three-point range. Cole Anthony and Brandon Robinson combined for 9 of the team's 10 three-pointers, just one shy of tying the season record.
I mean, we've always had dudes who've been able to really shoot it. It's just that we've been getting quality looks for each other. Or, I mean, we're all making the extra pass. We're passing up the good shots for great shots, and dudes we're playing confidently now at this point.
I think we're learning how to play with each other. We're more comfortable with each other. There's a lot of chemistry out there. You play way better when there's chemistry out there. So I think that's been the biggest thing so far.
Garrison Brooks dominated in the paint, scoring 25 points and drawing fouls.
In my opinion, he's the best big in the ACC, if not the best big in the country. He's a beast, grown man, and he's just, I have not seen anyone be able to really guard him this year.
It's great. It's great. Showing they believe in me, I think that's a really good thing. Always knowing that's an emphasis on our team. I think it makes our team better too. Just get the ball inside, and because it gets them a lot more open shots. So it's good.
North Carolina's season finale is Saturday against their arch rival, and a win against Duke would be the momentum they want heading into the ACC tournament next week. Covering the Tar Heels, I'm Alyssa Ray.
Great stuff, Alyssa. Thank you. The Tar Heels going to be looking for a little revenge this weekend. They're going to be heading up the road to visit Duke. Came back to win in the Dean Dome in overtime earlier this season. Who could forget that game? The next round in the rivalry tips off on Saturday at 7, by the way. And after that loss at the Dean Dome, Wake Forest is going to turn around and head back down I-40 for their final game. They'll try to upset NC State in Raleigh tomorrow night at 7. WGHB's Kevin Conley covering the Demon Deacons. Kevin.
Wake Forest has not been a good road team under head coach Danny Manning. After a loss to North Carolina on Tuesday, the Deacons take on NC State in Raleigh on Friday night to finish the regular season. There is already talk about the future of head coach Danny Manning. Stay tuned for that. Wake opened a new practice facility on campus this year, and there is a tribute to Wake's basketball history. Danny Harnden has more.
The Heritage Room at Wake Forest just speaks to you. You could spend hours getting lost in the history of Deacon basketball. From the 1939 team that went to the Elite Eight, all the way to today's team and every big story in between. Craig Zacharuski shows off the really cool interactive screen.
You can pick anybody, pick local hometown guy, Josh Howard. Again, kind of pulls up his recap, gives you some, photos of his time here at Wake Forest.
It's located inside the Shaw Basketball Complex and is open to the public during regular office hours, Monday through Friday.
Wake Forest has a really rich basketball tradition, and this space allows fans, recruits, parents, everyone kind of come in here and kind of maybe learn something they didn't realize before, or just kind of get reacclimated with history that they may have, forgotten about.
So many great stories here, like Chris Paul at Wake and with the Olympic team. The Tim Duncan years, it's old school and new school for the men's and the women's. Zacharewski was a student manager for Coach Odom when the Deacons won the NIT championship. Interesting story about tracking down that trophy.
The 2000 NIT championship trophy, we couldn't find it. And when Coach Nestor came back and was working with the team, he would get on me every time he'd see me, he'd say, "Zach, where's the trophy? Did you find that trophy yet?" And we couldn't find it. I looked and looked, and by chance a few weeks ago was over at the Russell building, where we had kind of some offices temporarily. And down in the bottom kind of doldrums of the Russell building, there was this room, and there was some miscellaneous old trophies. And sure enough, there was the NIT championship trophy. So I picked it up, came right over and showed Coach Nestor, "Hey, mission accomplished, found the trophy," and now it's sitting in one of our cases here.
If Wake Forest is going to add to that history, it will need to run the table in the ACC tournament next week just to make the NCAA tournament. Covering Wake Forest, I'm Kevin Conley.
Thanks a lot there, Kevin. Syracuse, meanwhile, may be out most of the NCAA tournament projections, but the Orange could finish 5th in the ACC. And as WSYR Stephen Fanti reports, Jim Boeheim's team made some history this week.
Well, the win at Boston College on Tuesday doesn't really help Syracuse's NCAA tournament resume at all. That topic of an at-large bid is pretty much off the table at this point. The focus, big picture for this team, is to make a run down in Greensboro. The focus Tuesday night, though, was on just getting a victory. And by doing so, the SU men's basketball program extends its streak of consecutive winning seasons to 50 in a row. That's the longest active streak in the country. Elijah Hughes was once again fantastic. The ACC's leading scorer went for 28 points as he tries to make a late push for the conference's Player of the Year award.
Doesn't matter who they have. Not many people have anybody can guard Elijah Hughes in this league. He's hard to guard. And when he's shooting, which he still wasn't great, but he made some. When he's shooting, he's very hard to guard.
With losses by Clemson and Notre Dame last night, that means a win on Saturday at Miami, and Syracuse will earn the number 5 seed next week in the ACC tournament. Covering Syracuse, I'm Stephen Fanti.
Good stuff, man. Thank you. Syracuse stays on the road to close out that regular season. The Orange face off against the Hurricanes in Miami on Saturday. That one tips off at 4. Boston College will have a tough time improving their record now. Their final game is on the road at Florida State Saturday afternoon at 4:30. That's going to be a monster. All right, now it's coming down to the wire in the ACC with 4 teams competing for the top spot and, well, with more pushing for NCAA tournament bids there. So let's bring on Jason Logan from Covers.com to help us get to the bottom of this. And, Jason, we've got one more weekend of regular season action heading into that. How many programs are currently projected to get into the NCAA tournament? And does anyone have a chance to sneak in at the last minute?
Yeah, as it stands, given all the projection models that are out there, we're seeing 4 teams from the ACC get in. Florida State is the highest ranked team, getting a projected number 2 spot. We're seeing Duke projected at a number 3, Louisville coming in at a 4, and then the defending national champion Virginia Cavaliers coming in around a 9 to a 10. Definitely a team that no one wants to run into in that opening round of the tournament. As it pertains to this weekend's results and someone maybe sneaking in, I don't think it's going to happen. NC State is the big bubble team in the ACC right now. They host Wake Forest on Friday night, and that's a game that might not have that much weight in terms of the selection committee. If they win that game, they probably stay promptly on the bubble. If they lose that game, it's definitely going to be detrimental to their big dance chances. But I think NC State is going to have to go into the ACC tournament and turn the head of the selection committee with an upset win or 2.
Meanwhile, Louisville visits Virginia in the marquee ACC matchup this Saturday. The Cavaliers are playing some of the best basketball in the country right now, winning 7 in a row. What's fueling this streak, and what does UVA need to do to take down the Cardinals, rather?
Yeah, so like most Virginia teams under Tony Bennett, it's pace and defense that's getting the job done. They've limited those last 7 opponents to 54 points per game, and then they've tightened the bolts here in those last 3 games, giving up just 53 points on 35% shooting against. As it pertains to Louisville, Virginia has to come out and stop them right out of the blocks. They can't allow this Cardinals team to get hot. Louisville put up 44 first-half points against Virginia in their last meeting. They went on to score 80 points in that game. It was the highest point total Virginia has allowed all season. It really sucked Virginia out of its comfort zone. They couldn't play that controlled pace on offense. They had to hurry up. And as we've seen, they're not as good a shooting team as last year, so they have a tough time digging themselves out of the holes. What they need to do here is kind of do the same thing they did against Duke there last week. Hold them to 25 first-half points, and then they're very much going to be in the fight against the Cardinals.
And we couldn't call it an ACC rundown without looking at the Tobacco Road rivalry. While this game may have lost some of its shine, what do bettors need to know about UNC versus Duke this Saturday?
Yeah, well, what we love to say with these rivalry games is you take the records and the rankings and you throw them out the window. And that's what we did with the last matchup between UNC and Duke, and it paid out, actually. UNC went and battled hard, lost a squeaker, a 2-point overtime loss to Duke. They covered as 5.5-point home underdogs in that game, and they've actually covered in 5 straight against the Blue Devils. If we look at Duke, they're not playing their best basketball right now. They're clinging to a number projected seed, and they can't take another bad loss. They've dropped 3 of their last 5 games, which is contrasting compared to UNC's form right now. We saw them, they followed a 7-game losing streak with a 3-game winning streak, and they have been absolutely possessed on offense during this streak as well, averaging 90 points, shooting better than 51% from the field. Absolutely on fire. You know, if we want to throw the records out and just base it on results right now, UNC definitely looks like a live dog given the path of these two teams. And I think we're in store for a very high-scoring affair at Cameron Indoor with North Carolina. If this is them finally finding their form after this entire season and all of those injuries, UNC, if this is them, if this is really North Carolina, this is a team no one wants to run into in the ACC tournament.
Well, we'll see if that is for sure coming up here this Saturday. Thanks, Jason. Enjoy the big games this weekend. And with just 1 weekend left, we can still see a lot of movement in the ACC standings. So let's take a look at where things stand right now, shall we? No matter what happens this weekend, these are your top 4 teams. They'll all get double byes in the ACC tournament and play their first games in Greensboro 1 week from today. Right now, Florida State is on top at 15-4. Louisville is also 15-4, but behind the Seminoles in the head-to-head tiebreaker. Duke and Virginia, both a game back at 14-5. Things get even trickier after that. Syracuse and Georgia Tech are both 10-9, but the Yellow Jackets won't be participating in the ACC tournament because of that postseason ban. 1 game behind those teams, Notre Dame, NC State, and Clemson all checking in at 9-10. Boston College and Virginia Tech are both 7-12, so with just 1 game remaining, they won't be able to catch those teams in front of them. And as of right now, these are the 4 teams that will open up play in the ACC tournament. ACC tournament on Tuesday. Wake, Miami, Wake Forest, Miami, and UNC are all 6-13. Pitt, 6-14, is off this weekend, so their next game will be Tuesday in Greensboro. The ACC tournament starts next Tuesday, so we'll be live courtside at the Greensboro Coliseum next week. You can watch Chase for the Championship on Tuesday at 3 p.m. Then join us on your lunch break on Wednesday and Thursday at 11 a.m. And then Friday and Saturday, we'll be live at 6:30 p.m. once again. We're going to see you then. But until next week, man, get out there and enjoy some basketball. Take care.